see, live. All right. Okay, yeah, we are live. Let's see. Okay. All right, 3, 2, and 1. Let's go. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Persuasion by the Pint. I am Jonathan Taylor, along with
Sean McCool.
Sean. Today, we've got a returning guest,
Yes.
Mr. Bob Bly. Would you call him the dead poet?
Yeah, right. There's a Robert Bly who passed away recently.
That's right.
But it's not that Robert Bly. It's a different. No. That was Robert E. Bly. This is Robert W. Bly.
Robert W. Bly.
We'll just call him W for short.
That's right. That's right.
Seems like a good nickname for somebody.
He's got a new book out this week, and so we're going to be talking about that. It's the 5 Axioms of Copywriting. Interested to get into that. It is it's brand new, so we'll be getting into those 5 axioms. It's the 5 universal elements that form the foundation of copywriting.
Yep.
And
yeah, I've got the table of contents pulled up over here. I mean, this book is literally 2 days old as we're recording this.
Exactly.
As far as the world is concerned. I'm sure Bob feels like it's 100 years old since he's already lived with it. But yeah, it looks good. I mean, I haven't bought a copywriting book in a while, but I got to tell you, this one may go in the cart. Well, it's already in the cart. I'm just waiting for the paperback version to show up. So I don't like.
Yeah, I've got the Kindle. So, but you know how those Kindle things are, those e-readers. It's just there's only so much you can't really scratch them up and dog ear them and all that stuff.
I want it laying on my desk. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
Or at least easy reference in the shelf behind me. So
exactly.
So
just to give our listeners, many of you know Bob Bly. He is a professional writer, speaker, marketing consultant with over 3 decades of experience in business-to-business, high-tech, and direct response marketing. He became a self-made multimillionaire when he was still in his 30s. Bob is the author of over 90 published books, including Career for Writers, Secrets of Freelance Writers, The Copywriter's Handbook, which is one of my all-time favorites. It's a reference on my desk. And The Elements of Business Writing. So he's got so many, not to mention all the ebooks and stuff, all of the e-products that, ebooks and downloadables that I've purchased over the years off of his website. Just so much information out there, but he has written a slew of books over his years. So we're pleased to have him on. And with that said, Bob, welcome back to the show.
Hey guys, it's good to see you.
Anybody that writes over 90 books needs a lot of applause there.
Needs an applause track for sure.
And some beer in a minute.
There you go. There you go.
Or less.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you write? I mean, how do you write 90 books? That's just
not to correct you, but actually at this point over 100 books.
Yeah,
which is
it's been 2 weeks since that stat was published.
Yeah, 2 weeks since the 90.
I'm just curious. I mean, that's not really that's a kind of a dumb question, but
no,
I'm just curious your writing style. Like, are you a fast writer, or do you take time to write things out when you or are you kind of kind of repurposing a lot of your content that you've put together over time in kind of a different format?
For the first 50, 60, 70 books, it was mainly original for the books, but as I went on and wrote more and more blog posts and articles for the internet, I did take a lot of that stuff and repurpose it into books. Yep. And to answer the question, how can I do that many? You have to understand, this is basically all I do. My vocation is writing copy, and my avocation is writing books. And writing and reading is my thing. I don't have a lot of other outside interests.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's amazing. And
I can just hear you clicking and clacking away on your keyboard.
That's my favorite thing. And when I got a new computer, it came with one of these flat laptop type keyboards that didn't click. So I put my old keyboard back, which has raised keys.
There you go.
And that's what I prefer.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
one of the few people alive who started writing on a manual typewriter.
Yeah, I don't know if you know this, Bob, but they actually make a mechanical keyboard for computers now. That I haven't tried one yet. I want to.
No, I haven't tried it yet either.
I don't know if it'd be quite the same or not, but that would be worth trying.
Yeah,
could be fun.
Sean, didn't you get one of those kind of a clickety keyboard there?
No, that's what I wanted one. But
okay.
I put it on my Christmas list, and we'll see Saturday.
It may be under the tree. Up. Okay, I bet it's under the tree.
So I can't buy anything off my wish list right now because you never know. So, all right, well, let's talk beverages. Everybody's got a beverage today.
That's right. That's right.
Bob, we always let our guests go first. Why don't you tell the people what you've got?
So I hadn't had this before today. My brother-in-law brought it over. It's Ship Bottom Hoppin' Hazy IPA. And from the label, you can't tell this. But when I opened it and had my first one, it's somewhat like a grapefruit beer, which is something I happen to like. I don't think they're in my top 3, but I really enjoy them, especially if you want something refreshing.
Yeah. Yeah, I like some of the citrusy beers. Yep. I don't like the IPAs that get into like pine tree tasting stuff. Those
tastes like a car odor thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Those are not our favorites, but some of the citrus ones are actually the shandies and stuff are pretty good. So
well,
that one sounds good. Jonathan, what do you have over there?
So I have a returning beer. It's only a seasonal, so I can only get it this time of year. So I was excited to see it back on the shelf. It is it's actually starting to spill over a little, but is the Plaid Habit from Boulevard Canadian Whiskey Barrel Aged Imperial Brown Ale. So an Imperial Brown Ale. You don't see too many of those. I mean, most of what we have are Imperial stouts on the show. So it's good to have you can only get this usually around December, January, and then you'll never see it again. So
you got to grab them while you can.
Got to grab it while you can. So
I've got,
go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I've got one.
I was going to say 12.5%.
Okay. There you go.
There you go. That's all you need to know.
Yeah. So I'm, let's see, I'm coming in 11.8% today. So this is, Happy Holidiculous. So it's, if you might remember, not too long ago I had on one with the same pig.
Oh yeah.
But it was called Ridiculous AF. This is the holiday version. So that was a Russian Imperial Stout. This is a Russian Imperial Stout also, but it's got salted caramel for the holidays. So it's just, again, it's a holiday, as you can see by the hat from the pig and the present on the can.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a local, not too far. It's here in Texas. Which oddly enough, everything in Texas is local as long as it's inside Texas, even though it may be 10 hours from here. So I'm not sure exactly where this is, Webster, Texas. But yeah, I have already had this, so I know it's pretty good.
Okay.
I have not rated it yet, but yeah, I've got it poured and it tend to be a little sweet. So I've poured early to let it air out.
All right.
Well, cheers.
Well, gentlemen, cheers.
Cheers.
All right, Bob, I don't know if we had, last time you came on, I don't know if we had this, but we do a 5.
We did it last time too.
Okay, 5 pints. All right. So 1 to 5 pints. Give us your rating.
This is a solid 4. 5 I reserve for my absolute favorites, but this is very refreshing. And of the citrusy beers, it's actually one of the better ones. So I like it. I recommend it.
Okay. Very good.
All right.
Sean, you already know. So
but I haven't rated.
I've already had this one too. So
yeah, so I haven't rated this one before. It's a little sweet going in, the caramel. Like it really tastes like you're chewing on a caramel chew. So I'm going to give this about a 3.8. It's a little
3.8.
Yeah, a little too sweet. Unless you got maybe something with it. I don't know what you would have with it, but some type of food to pair with it would probably tame it down a little bit. But so
all right.
3.8.
3.8. I'm going to give this one and I have no, I have to go back and see what I rated it last time, but each time we have it on the show, it doesn't matter. It's a new rating altogether because you just don't know, there's so many factors that play into your rating. So, but I'm going to give this one a 4. I'm going to give this one a 4.6 on today's show. It is really good. It's that Canadian, you can just taste the Canadian rye. It's got a little vanilla mixed in, but it's not too sweet, which is what I like. Very good aftertaste. And the notes are just really good. So
that's probably the difference between the ale and the stout. It wouldn't be as sweet.
I would think so. It's not as it's not as sweet. Just really smooth sipping. So 4.6. All
right. That's not a bad showing. So
All
right. Well, let's roll into this book. Let me throw the ticker up there.
Yes. The Axioms of Copywriting. So Bob, give us I know you're, just from following you over the years, reading a lot. I know, you have a lot, obviously, with your experience. You see all of these up and coming copywriters that are, getting their start, and they're they're so braggadocious about all of their accomplishments and what they're doing. But I find that, in reading kind of the intro to your book, you kind of lay into that a little bit, and I don't blame you. I feel the same way, but there's a difference between the flash, that you would get from Madison Avenue and the advertising, what looks good and what sounds great, what's clever and funny and all of this stuff. There's a huge difference between that and then what actually hooks people into buying that product or service or whatever you're selling. So talk about that. Let's set that as our introduction before we get into the axiom.
Well, and the answer is simple, and you already know it. People on Madison Avenue, the big agencies, the big corporations, they are essentially brand advertisers, which is a code word for saying, I really don't know how to sell it. And so they have other criteria. They love awards, they love creativity, they love funny. But we, and I include you guys, me, and the listeners, we're mainly direct response copywriters, whether it's paper or digital, and more of it's digital today. We only want to sell. And we have learned that, 97% of the time, if you just, what sells is not the same as branding copy. And see, the problem on Madison Avenue, they set being clever as their objective. Our objective being clever, but our objective, right, guys, is not to be clever, it's to sell.
Right. Well, we have this conversation every year after the Super Bowl. Sean and I do kind of a post Super Bowl podcast where we talk about, some of the clever commercials, and some of them are definitely, they get your attention, but none of them, if you go 2 years down the road and you were to mention it, or, they're so forgettable after, you might remember like the story behind it, but you're probably going to confuse the product. What brand was that? What were they selling again?
I don't think it's a year. I ask people, if you were watching TV and you say, that was a great commercial. Much of the time you ask them the next minute, what product was it? And I don't remember the product, but I really like the commercial.
Yeah, unless it's like Budweiser or something like that.
Sure. Yeah.
Then people tend to remember, but they've been at it a long time. They really are branding. Where some of the newer companies that are branding are actually, like you said, just trying to be clever and get some quick attention, compared to brands like Budweiser and Coke that are trying to keep their brand alive.
Yeah.
So, I read the intro too, and about the copywriters and things like that, and I was like, yeah, this sounds familiar. It's like, it reminded me of like, I could see you on a debate stage, debating another copywriter, and you could be like, I know A-level copywriters, and you, sir, are not an A-level copywriter.
That would be great.
So, yeah, I've worked with some A-level copywriters, and I would never call myself an A-level copywriter just because I've worked with them directly.
Yeah.
I've been in the room with them, and that's a pretty high bar for when people just throw that term around pretty loosely these days.
Sure.
But I will say this too. One of my first copy chiefs, you know him, Bob, Mike Palmer, Stansberry.
Great guy. Yeah.
He's like, because that was like at my first quarterly review. He's like, what do you want to do? I was like, I want to be A-level copywriter. He's like, well, you can be. It's hard. It's a lot of work. He said, but you can make a lot of money being a B, maybe even a C-level copywriter, especially if you're selling your own stuff. So,
yeah, absolutely.
So I'm excited.
That's the interesting thing that you said, though. If you're going to work for the premier clients, such as Mike works for Agora Publishing,
right?
You won't succeed. You won't beat other packages. You won't have controls unless you are, in fact, an A-level copywriter. But a lot of people who are, and there's nothing wrong with it, who are successful selling their products online, and as it happens, a lot of them are information products, are B-level copywriters, maybe even C. However, they have huge egos. You know, they think they're the greatest thing, forgive the cliche, since sliced bread. And I say, I don't understand how, as a direct response copywriter, you can have a big ego, because what we do is humbling. You know, the great Ted Nicholas said that, you know, he would write 10 ads and one would win. He said, but that one would pay for my yacht. So, and you know, it's often a humbling thing to write copy, especially you write something that you think is beautiful and brilliant, and it falls flat. Then you have something that you say, I didn't do such a good job, and it becomes a control. So we only in direct response judge what we do by results. You know, the general consumer advertisers judge it by something else.
Yep.
Right. Exactly.
So there's a difference, you know, let's jump in the first axiom, which you talk about the offer. And that's where,
before we jump into it, can you define axiom for us and our listeners?
That was not my idea. It was the publisher's idea. He has a series of books on axioms, and rules are guidelines you should follow. Let's just apply it to copywriting. When doing copywriting or marketing or anything else, that makes sense most of the time. But an axiom, and there are very few of them in the world or in the universe, is something that is true either all the time or virtually all the time. For example, it's an axiom that if you flew a spaceship into the sun, you would burn to a crisp. And so in copywriting and marketing, what are the things that are always true? Principles, yeah. If you violate it, you're going to bomb. You're going to fail.
Yeah. Great. That's good. I was going to say axiom did not sound like a word that would score like, 6 or lower on on an FK score. So
no, I approached the guy and we were talking. I said, how about I do a book of copy rules? He says, do axioms. So at first I was a little put off. I said, well, are there any axioms? And I found in marketing there are at least a dozen axioms, in various fields.
Yeah.
So you cover 5 in this book,
right?
And so let's roll into them. Let's talk about some of them. Jonathan, I'll let you drive since you've read more of this than I have.
Yeah.
I've got the table of contents here, which has a lot of information in it, so I'll be able to play along.
Well, I've already skimmed through the whole book, but I got to go back in and highlight when I get the physical. Like I said, Kindles just don't give you that reference material, you can only skim
there's a little glitch with the publisher and Amazon. And so today you can't get the paperback, and I'm a paperback guy too, but that'll be rectified shortly.
Yeah. And you can add it to your cart and buy it, and they'll just send it out when it gets here. So,
yep.
So following up with what we were just talking about, focusing on the offer is more important than focusing on the brand, which is so often the case with people who want to just spend time talking about brand, my personal brand this. But the important thing from a copywriting standpoint is that you're focused mainly on the offer. And Sean and I are going to talk about this on a follow-up episode, because we're going to be discussing making offers that are so good that your customers or your prospects out there feel stupid not to take it. And that's really the whole point, is to give them an offer that they would feel stupid not to take advantage of that offer. Correct?
Yeah, the term you see used more often, and I agree with what you say, is irresistible. Yep. It's so good, you have to do it.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, I've bought a couple of those recently. So I really don't need this, but I might, and it was that kind of offer. It was stacked. It was, some guys in the information marketing space that I'm already a fan of and like. So I was like, yeah, it's a good package of stuff. I'll take it.
One of the things that, I've always admired about your copy, Bob, is when I go, especially on a lot of your e-reports and ebooks that I've purchased, is how to really highlight the offer, and you use bullet points so well. Like I've looked at, the way you always use your bullets on your, if you go to bly.com and you go to some of the individual offers on your ebooks and things like that, your bullets are just crazy good in terms of your offer, because it makes it, especially when you highlight on certain pages, you're going to get this, you're going to, you're going to learn about this particular thing that you need to know. Right. So that makes me, obviously creates a lot of curiosity. So if you would just kind of share a little bit about your secrets for creating irresistible offers.
Well, first, the reason I became so bullet focused is when I just started freelancing in copywriting, I had also written a couple of books, and I said, you know what? I'm going to sell one of my products. I'm going to sell a public seminar in how to write and publish a book. And this is what happened. So I sent out a flyer. This is way pre-internet. And I sent out a flyer best I could and wrote the strongest bullets I could. And what I discovered is the power of bullets. I would have at least half of the people who showed up, we had 100 people, would come up with the flyer. They brought it, and it was a whole page of bullets, and they'd point to one and say, you're going to cover this, right? And I learned that one bullet can be what influences people, and if it wasn't there, they wouldn't have come. So the better the bullets and the more bullets, the better your rates, your conversion rates.
Right. Yeah, because it's not going to be the same bullet for everybody, right?
Yeah.
So you got to have enough to hit the spectrum of people with the spectrum of problems that they have. Yeah, I've done that myself. I've bought on one bullet, read a whole newsletter and then a whole sales letter, and then one bullet just jumps out like in 3D lights. Yeah.
Now the formula, you guys know who Paris Lampropoulos is, right?
Yes.
So he states it in a very articulate way. He says,
of course.
He says, this is a bad bullet. Eat apples to prevent arthritis. Well, that's an interesting fact, but if you tell me that, why do I need to buy your diet book or your nutrition book? You already told me. So you see this on the internet. This one common fruit you have in your refrigerator can get rid of your arthritis pain. So it's the same thing. There's a food, but you don't know what it is. You have to buy the product to find out. And so that's his method. And
that's a great point, because you do see a lot of, five bullet little pieces on the internet, whether it's a webinar or something else, where they give too much away and they don't keep it curious enough and they don't put enough fascination into it. And
and that's what you call them. As you said, they're fascinations.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, one thing you mentioned, giving stuff away, we have found that if you have a bullet heavy package, and some publishers do that, Boardroom does it, FCNA book publishers do it. If you toss in one or two, but usually one, that is actually the way Paris says not to do it. That gives it's like a freemium. It gives the information away. That also creates interest because they feel like they have learned something just by reading your promotion. And if they figure, if I learn something just by reading the copy, this is going to be a good product. So that technique can work.
Right. Yeah. You just don't want to do too much of it. Kind of
very little. Well, very little.
I mean, I remember Clayton saying, a tactic known is a tactic blown, right? So you got to keep everything kind of mixed up and keep them guessing. But like you said, give them enough that they feel like they learned something. And the assumption is, if they're giving me this, the other stuff that they're not telling me must be just as good or better.
Sure.
Exactly. Guys, you know who Porter Stansberry is, right?
Yes.
So Porter, once I was at and I've done some work for him, and I know him. We were at some marketing event, and he was speaking, and he said, and which is a contrary opinion, he says, we have to make our promotions better than the product, because if they say their promotion is so great, I can't wait to get the product. And he says the mistake is people make their promotions, especially information premiums, very weak.
Yeah.
And then people look at the premium and say, this report sucks and it's free. What am I going to buy this for?
Right.
Yeah.
And he's right.
Yeah. But I remember when I was working there, I mean, the big thing we did is it felt like you were learning a lot, but you didn't actually like learn a lot, because it was more leading you up to, you learned a lot about the problem. I guess that's the difference. You learned a ton about the problem and why it was a problem and how the problem was going to affect your life and all that kind of stuff. But you never really got the solution unless you ordered.
Yeah.
The solution was always part of the freebies that came when you subscribed, but it was a free report that you were going to get when you subscribed. So it felt like you weren't paying for anything, because you could always cancel and keep the free reports. But yeah, the problem was laid out so well in a way that people had not articulated themselves that it felt very valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And there's a similar technique, not exactly what you said, which Mark Ford calls false logic. And you know what that is. He says you say something so authoritatively and content rich that people say this has got to be true, even though in fact they don't understand what you're talking about. But they read it and they think they understand.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I was doing a piece of an ad for a piece of industrial equipment. What's called a scrubber. And you've seen them in plants. They have liquid and they clean all the gases that come out of the plants. So I said, it's a new technology, the HK scrubber. And how did we come up with that? Well, all scrubbers have liquid in them, water, so it's hydro, and the water is moving, so it's kinetic. I made that up. And suddenly no one wanted a Venturi scrubber anymore. They wanted an HK scrubber. So it had a false logic that fooled even chemical engineers, which I am. But, in fact, they didn't understand what it meant.
Yeah. That's so funny. It reminded me, I did a package one time for polishing pads. And there's like 3 pieces to a good polishing pad. There's like the resin, the diamonds, and then I can't remember something else, what it is. And so I called it trifectamate technology.
I mean, I like
three technologies made it together, that kind of thing. So, but yeah, made up term.
Yeah. You created something new there.
And made up terms have been throughout business very effective. I look at Michael Hamner, he made a fortune with re-engineering. It's not a new idea. It's just making something better, doing it, doing the whole thing over. But, they work.
Reminds me of, Claude Hopkins when he did the, what was the beer? Schlitz beer?
Schlitz. Well, that was a little different. Do you remember that? He wanted to find a difference. So he was walking through the brewery and he noticed there was a machine with bottles were upside down on a spindle and blowing steam into them. And he said to the beer master, the brewer, "What's that?" He goes, "You don't have to write about that. We're washing the bottles in live steam." And Claude Hopkins was very interested. And the guy said, "No, everybody does that." And Hopkins says, "But no consumer knows that." And he came up with the campaign, "Beer so pure, we wash the bottles in live steam."
Yeah. That would probably still work today. Probably you could bring that back today.
False logic has never failed or gone out of style.
I mean, that exact claim, because it hasn't been used in so long, could probably be brought back today. I mean, Coors kind of does it.
Agree with you. Yeah.
I mean, Coors did the whole, mountain fresh, clean water, or whatever. That was kind of their thing for a while.
Sure.
But yeah, nobody's talking about the cleanliness of bottles, and in a pandemic world, that might be a good.
That's right.
Good hook.
If we can stay on this 1 minute longer.
Yeah.
I was always, when I was a kid, a big fan of the Adventures of Superman. So George Reeves used to make commercials for Kellogg's and Post cereals that ran on that show. And I listened to one of them recently, and the narration of it said it was for cornflakes. Cornflakes are so healthy because corn is the grain that spends more time in the sun than any other grain. It sounds illogical. It's in the sun. There's no scientific proof that how long a plant or grain stays in the sun has, any effect on it. But it's so believable.
Yeah.
Where do you? So I got to ask you, where do you find these? Because I would love to see some of these old.
Go on YouTube.
Okay.
Put Adventures of Superman or George Reeves, and they'll pop right up. And they're real. His art. That's how you can find his.
Okay.
Interesting. All right. Well, let's. So we talked about offers bigger than brands. So if there's one takeaway you wanted to tease people with, because we wanted to buy the book, and from the offer section, what would it be? Yeah. See, this one's got me curious, like the free versus other words.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a separate issue from the question you asked. So free versus other words. The thing about that is when I started and I wrote for corporate clients, they said free sounds cheesy. Say complimentary. And it's so wrong. Free is one of the most powerful words. It's not an original observation, and people want free stuff. Bill Jamie, you guys know who Bill Jamie was, right?
Yes.
The great copywriter for magazine subscriptions. He said, when something is free, say it 7 ways till Sunday. Free, no cost, won't cost you a penny.
Sure.
Yours without charge. And that's how he wrote. He was, as we know, he was very successful.
Yeah.
But I'd say that with the thing that is I don't know that it's the biggest point about offers, but one thing is, even if the offer of package A or commercial A versus B is the same, just the way you phrase it or the way you position it can work. For example, let's say you're selling a back in the day, you remember Nightingale Conant, they sold audio cassettes. So you could say, this product has 8 audio cassettes. But what about saying this product has 6 audio cassettes, and order now, and you get 2 bonus cassettes, topic A and topic B. It's the exact same thing, and that will work better 9 times out of 10.
Absolutely.
I was running an agency last year, and one of the things we were finding with supplements, supplements, typically it's 1, 3 and 6 units of the same supplement at discounted prices, right? We were also finding, though, that you could do, instead of 3, if you did buy 2, get 1 free, that would sometimes do as well or better than 3 at a discount.
Yeah, with supplements, I have the same thing, and I do a lot of supplement work. And what you said is exactly true, but that's not an axiom. You have to test it. Sometimes that works better. Sometimes 1, 3, 6. And this is also not an axiom, but you know this. If you offer 1, 3, 6, most of the orders will be in the average of 3 units. Right. People say the big one is too expensive.
Yep.
The little one, I'm not getting enough. So they go good, better, best. They usually go for better.
Right. Yep. Take the middle quote.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, let's move on to Axiom 2.
Long copy still works in today's social media savvy culture where our attention spans are 2 seconds.
Goldfish.
Well, first I want to just clarify. This axiom doesn't say long copy always beats short copy.
Gotcha.
It says long copy can work. And you find a lot of people today, a lot of millennials in advertising, who just totally dismiss that. They say no one reads copy anymore. I mean, I can remember the first assignment I had when I was hired as a copywriter at Westinghouse. I was writing a brochure, and the guy who was the product manager, said, no, this is too much copy. No one reads copy. I said, well, here's an idea. If no one reads copy, let's just print the brochure with pictures only and blank pages, and it'd be just as good. You save me time. I won't have to write it. He didn't think it was funny, but it's a ridiculous statement.
Good argument.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
So how long did you stay employed after that?
No, they didn't fire me, although I quit soon afterwards.
Yeah.
No, I think the point is long copy, long copy works as long as you keep them engaged. And that's the key element, is keeping someone engaged in the copy so that they don't, you don't lose their attention.
There was a funny story, not funny, an interesting story told by Maxwell Sackheim in his book, My Life is Advertising. He said he had done an ad, full-page tabloid newspaper ad for, I think it was Merrill Lynch, a broker. And every column was packed with type, which is very unusual in those days, solid type. And the client says, you cannot write an ad, and the client's name, let's say, was George McAdam. And he said, you can't, no one will read this. He said, and Sackheim said, I can write now an ad that's 5,000 words, and you would read every word. And I'll tell you the headline. This ad is all about George McAdam. So if it's there's several factors that we go into in the book that determine copy length. Sure. One of them is whether the offer is pure logical or emotional. So if you're selling paper clips, you don't need long copy. Yeah. But if you're selling an elaborate investment of real estate to private equity real estate, it's got to be explained and laid out so that it's and that's a lot of money to buy real estate.
Right.
Yeah.
What about front end versus back end? Do you feel like that has a big effect on copy length?
Yeah, I would say, because we know it is easier to sell an existing customer than it is to get a new customer. I mean, the thing people say is 5 times. I haven't measured it, but it's many times easier to sell someone who's already your customer than someone who's a new customer. So yes, I would say that often back-end promotions are long for other reasons, but yeah, all else being equal, the front end has to be longer.
Okay. All right. Let's move into axiom 3. More research equals better copy.
How much research what's the ratio of research, Bob, that you would on average?
Don Houtman, I don't know if you guys remember Don, and he had said, when he was giving a talk at the Newsletter Association, and he said, half my time on the package is research. And I would say for me, it's at least a third. And the purpose to do research is not only, as most people think, to get facts and proof, to add to your copy. That's important. But the other thing is, and I won't name the guy, but a very well-known healthcare marketer. He's the owner of the company. And I was writing for them. And he said, you have to do this research because the big idea is not something you will come up with. It's somewhere in the research. And he's right. So you get the information that stimulates ideas, and you get information that allows you to write copy that is convincing.
Yeah, and you one of the first little bullets here under that section is Google versus research. So a lot of people will just go to Google and type in some stuff. So I'm curious what you mean by Google versus research. I think I know, but I'm curious.
Well, I use a term, you see this, content writers, for example. You find a C-level content writer on Upwork, and you hire, and I've done that for some of my online businesses as a test, and it doesn't work. And so what happens is you ask them to write an article about careers in chemistry, and they go on Google and they find 4 or 5 articles on careers in chemistry, and they mix them, cobble them together, and give you the article, and they know nothing about the topic.
Yeah.
So research is going beyond the quick and easy stuff. By the way, he wrote this page for my chemistry website, Careers in Chemistry. And I'm not joking about this. His first draft, the first sentence was, chemistry is a good career for people who are fond of atoms. which I will never forget, and to me is very funny.
Hopefully he didn't misspell Adams and say.
No, he got Adams right. And can you believe that a professional writer would hand that in?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
I can believe it.
Yeah, we can. We can.
Hired some of those people myself. So, so where do you do a lot of your research? Where do you start? I mean, what are some places you start that maybe people wouldn't think about?
I don't know if they wouldn't think about it, but here are some of the places. One way is that and this is nothing new, you talk to people who are, let's say it's a magazine or trade journal. You talk to people who are, and I did this once. I had to write a direct mail package for a pediatric journal for doctors, pediatricians. You talk to people who are pediatricians, and even better, you talk to pediatricians who subscribe to the journal. And when I was doing that, I sat down with a pediatrician, and he said something very interesting. He said, everybody assumes that pediatricians become that because they're goo goo gaga over kids. They love them. He said, I like kids, but my goal is I want families to be healthy. And the family and the parents are not going to be happy if the child is not healthy, and the child won't be happy if he's not healthy. So I want them to be healthy. Not like if you read, I don't know if you guys ever read Dr. Spock, Baby and Child Care, which was the best-selling book ever from a pediatrician. Dr. Spock was crazy about kids, but most pediatricians, or a lot of them, are not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So interviews is a good place.
Here's another one. Go to seminars, workshops, and trade shows where the audience is the audience you're writing for. This happened to me very early in my career. I was writing copy for a mainframe software company in New Jersey, and they said, come to our user group meeting. And it was valuable, but not so much for the information I got in the product, but hearing these IT directors speak about IT. And everyone assumes technical people, they're just, they just want facts and nuts and bolts. These guys were so passionate. I hate that word, but that's what it was, and emotional about their topic. They were having an argument versus, like in wireless, what's better, CDMA or TDMA? And we think it's technical, but they will want to kill each other over disagreements. And you learn, your prospects care about this on a deeper level than you do as a copywriter. And you have to get into that mindset and care about it. And you also learn that they make decisions, even though they're B2B or techies in that case, they make decisions as everyone else does. First with emotion. Now they will use the facts and the speeds and feeds, we say, to back up that decision. But it's emotional. Remember that commercial, Apple versus IBM? That's a huge, for users, it's not a rational argument.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. And we bought into the Mac side, Jonathan and I. So we've talked about that on the show many times.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with just talking to industry experts. I love going to trade shows for that very reason, Bob, is just, for no other reason than just to talk to people. I went to a couple of trade shows back in September and October in the industry that I do a lot of sales and marketing in. And I love just, walking trade shows, talking to people at their own booths, asking them questions, interviewing them, and getting feedback from them. Cause that gives me really a lot of input and a lot of ideas. And then connections follow up with them. So, Google is just, to me, is, you can get so much information on Google, but it's like you said, when you're talking to people that are experts in their own industries, there's so much more that you can learn and pull from using, for your copy, that you can just, add in and just, going kind of the lazy route of Google. So
it is the lazy route. And it's interesting you said trade shows. I started my career in the late 70s as a marketing communications manager for Westinghouse. And one of my main responsibilities was to do a lot of our trade shows. And I was there to set up the booth and make sure everything worked. But I also wrote the brochures and the ads, and I realized listening to the conversations just in our booth, I learned stuff that would never have occurred to me.
Sure.
That our customers would be interested in.
Yeah. The nuance that you pick up from those types of conversation, to me, it's like the difference between a great novel with great dialogue and a novel that just kind of talks about stuff that it doesn't have that nuance of the characters and the nuance of the relationships.
And it's not only nuance of the thinking and the buying process, it actually is nuance of language.
Absolutely.
You learn how people in the industry or the profession or the marketplace really speak.
Yeah. And that makes a huge difference, because then they know that you're for real and that you understand them, that, you understand their language. Yeah. Because they can spot it a mile off if you don't use their language.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I forget what I was doing recently, but I had something that was for pilots, and I've worked in that before, but actually it wasn't recently, it was a few years ago. And I was, writing about it, and the pilot of the company, they made executive jets. He said, we just never would say that. This is what we would say. Even though what I had there was taken right out of their technical manual.
Sure.
They don't talk like that.
Yeah.
That's how the engineers talk, but the pilots.
Yeah. Like in the defense industry, I found out that fighter pilots talk about kill ratios.
Yeah.
And we hadn't used those in our brochures. I said, we should say that.
Yeah. Because if that's what they're saying, that's what you should be saying. So this one's kind of similar, I think, or it feels like, well, at least it's a good, clean segue. Axiom 4, you talk about more experiences equal better copy. So
it's a little, it's similar. It's related, but it's a little different.
Tell us the difference, and I'm curious. I'm a little offended too, Bob. So you've got the millennial advantage in this section and the boomer, and you just left Jonathan and I, Gen X, out. So
I simplify by just doing the poles, the extremes.
Yes,
but this
we'll just put ourselves in the that boomer.
Yeah, definitely
generation
closer to that than not.
So what this means, and I got this again, I was attending a training session at Agora, and Mark Ford was speaking about copy, and he paused and he said to the audience, I really think if you're a copywriter, you should have kids. And it sounds like an odd thing, but there's a lot of products in the consumer side that relate to families and kids. And this is what I believe. I don't know if you guys have kids or not, but if you don't have kids, you don't really understand what it is to be a parent.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
And yes, we both have kids.
Yeah.
They're older too.
Yeah. So it's funny, if I have kid problems, my kids are older at this point. They're in, in their early 30s. I have a friend who's also was a well-known copywriter, but they never had kids. And he would always, if I said I had a problem or a worry, he'd say, well, what you should do is, I say, why are you even talking? You're not a parent. And then his rejoinder was, yeah, but I have a lot of nephews. And I said, if you even think that's remotely the same thing, you are
not even close. Not even close.
Have a dog, have a fur baby, right? Yeah. That's the other thing you hear these days. So I'm curious, what is the millennial advantage and the boomer advantage as far as experiences go?
Well, they're different. The boomer advantage is long life experience. Louis C.K., who's sort of fallen into disfavor for some bad behavior, I don't know if he did it or not, said older people, they just know what they're talking about because they have more experience. They've seen more.
Yeah.
So that's, it doesn't mean they always know what they're talking about, but that's their advantage. They've seen more situations. Yes. They've been confronted with more problems. The millennials, however, they have grown up, because we live in a technological world today and a digital world. They are more comfortable with it than the boomers. For example, like you, I'm a big computer user, and I studied programming, when I was 12. But my kids grew up with a PC in the house, and they were like, I don't know, 2, and they were sitting at the PC and using it. And we don't have that. I'm older. I'm in my 60s. I don't have that natural connection. I have to force myself to learn it.
Right. Exactly.
They pick up better. They grew up with it.
Yeah. Yeah, my son's 26, and yeah, he grew up same thing. 2 years old, he was playing the games on the PC, learning games on the PC. He was manipulating a mouse at 18 months, 2 years.
Exactly, my two kids. I would look in the
Yeah.
family room, and there would be my younger little Steven, 2 years old, barely can reach the keyboard, and he's doing stuff. My father, who was an insurance agent, he finally, in his older, toward the end of his career, when he was in his 70s, and he still worked at his agency, the agency got computers. He would not touch it. He said,
he's scared of them, literally.
Not even scared. Yeah, scared, but he just says, I don't need this.
Yeah.
It's just, he found it so repugnant. My mother, who's still alive, she's 90. My sister bought her a high-end smartphone, and my mother gave it back the next way. Said, I can't deal with this.
Yeah.
Too much. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you?
Mom, I'll get you two tin cans and a string like we used to use when we were kids.
Yeah, exactly. So how, if you're younger, do you get more experiences to give you some of those advantages?
Yeah.
And then the opposite, if you're older, how do you, especially as a copywriter, how do you tap into some of those younger advantages?
Well, in some ways, you're not gonna like my answer. You can't. If I wrote every experience I ever had, clearly it would be like 8,000 pages, and gave it to a 25-year-old. He's reading about it, but he hasn't lived it. So there's some things that like, for example, when I was young, I got married and my wife had cancer. That is an experience. If you have not gone through that, I can say, no matter what I say, the person who has not gone through that will not understand it as well as I do.
Right.
But same thing. I've written in the defense industry, but someone who was in Iraq and lost a leg, I can never understand that.
Yeah.
Like Kurt Vonnegut is one of my favorite writers, and he had the experience in World War II where he was in Dresden when it was firebombed. I never was in the Army or any armed services, and I just can't relate to them. It's my flaw, as well as I could if I had been in that. And there's certain experiences that I kind of wish I had, because it would make me. And if I had been in the Army, that would make me today, even though I don't have military clients anymore, a better copywriter.
Yeah.
Right.
In terms of the younger people, try to have more experiences. And I tell my sons, go outside of your comfort zone. Maybe, you might like social media and video games, but go for a summer, Habitat for Humanity and build a house. Have other experiences. The more experiences you have, the better you will be as a copywriter, because all of it, it's a cliche, is fuel. It's just for the mill, and it's not reflect. You can't duplicate that.
No, that's true. I mean, I was thinking as you were talking about your wife, like, parents who lose children or people who have lost a parent, like, until you go through that, you just don't know what that's like. You can read about it. You just don't know.
Absolutely. There are certain experiences that you just cannot learn from a book.
But as a copywriter, when you do have to kind of tap into that, maybe that's your market, you have to sell something to somebody who's going through something like that, for whatever reason it might be. Then how do you, is that where the research and the interviews and things like that
for example, my son, when he was in high school, he's very interested in history. He majored in history in college, and he was particularly interested in World War II. And he was reading about it, but at our church, we had a guy who there weren't many World War II veterans left, but he was like 85, and he had been, he had actually been in a combat, and he lost his leg in the field, and he was saved by a German doctor. But I said, I took Alex in to talk to him, because I said, you can't get this from a history book.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. That's so true. Last one. Axiom number 5, effectiveness equals, is this 1 divided by number of people? Is that what that
Yeah, here's the rule that's in the chapter. The quality of your copy is inversely proportional to the number of people who review and commented on it before it's published. So I have, again, I say, and there's some people who disagree with this, but this has been my experience. And it was certainly true as a freelance copywriter, that David Ogilvy said this: there can only be one cook in the kitchen.
Right.
And David, I don't know if you guys know who David Koch was, the billionaire, Koch brothers.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So
the
David
Koch brothers
had been, when I was young, he was my boss, and
wow.
Yeah, I worked for him. And I remember we were arguing in a group, a bunch of us, over a new design for our trade show booth. And, and everybody was saying, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And David sat back and said, do you guys know what a cow is? And we said, no. He said, it's a cat designed by committee. It's just.
That's great.
I never forgot that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you get people? How do you get eyes on your copy before it goes out without it getting turned into a cow?
You have people who are reviewers, but not authoritative reviewers. It's fine to get people's opinions, but when I was in the corporate world, we'd pass it around to like 9 people. They all make their comments, and I, as the junior employee or the copywriter, they were all product managers and marketing managers and engineers. I had to make every change they requested. And, that is a bad way to do it.
Yeah. Right.
We're making a cow designed by committee. So I'm happy to have people I trust look at it, but ultimately the fewer people who have authority over it, who can say, change this, revise this, fewer is better than more. And I'm not quite sure I made it into Axiom with that, but that's what I found in 40 years of experience.
Yeah.
Groups. Now the corporate world loves teams and groups, but I always say to people, copywriting is not a team sport.
Reminds me of that. What is it? The military, the Army. What is it? They did a documentary on the Bradley fighting vehicle. I don't know if you've seen that, Scott or Sean, but when they first designed this, it was supposed to be as kind of a streamlined scout vehicle. They started adding things, it went through one committee after another. They were adding all sorts of things, and it started getting heavier and heavier and heavier over time. And, Sean and I we're both in the Army, and actually, that was one of the things that I did when I was in the military. I was on one of those vehicles, and it could be as far from a scout vehicle as you can imagine. It's about as slow as can be. It's like a armored personnel carrier with no armor. Yeah. So it's funny. I just think of that when you talk about, a good
example.
Copy goes through committees or
and that
designs
is
go
what
through
happens.
Committees, and they weigh them down with all these other superfluous things that just, get in the way of what the intended goal was supposed to be.
If you want to get a great visual or picture of how copy reviewed by committee is bad, read Peggy Noonan's book, about her first book, about being a speechwriter at the White House. She said, even when she was doing a minor speech for like the first lady,
can't imagine,
there'd be 50 reviewers.
Yeah.
And you should read the book and see how she handled that and what happened, but it doesn't work.
No. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah. Bob, I know we're running short on time. It's been a real pleasure having you on today. It's always good to follow up with you. I want to mention your book. Obviously, people can find it over at Amazon. The Axioms of Copywriting: the 5 universal elements that form the foundation of advertising copy that works. That's the key, and that's the important thing, that works. How can people find out more about yourself outside of just getting the book and learning more about you?
Easy, because I have only a 3-letter domain name, Bly.com.
Easy.
Remember that. You go to my site and you can get more free content, more about me, see samples of my work, more than you would want to know.
That's right. I've got Bly.com in my bookmarks, on my bookmarks toolbar that I can go to and just kind of look at your some of your copy on some of your your info products. That I love just going to those and just pulling from those ideas. So
and I saw you have another book that was published recently, the How to Write and Sell Simple Information for Profit.
It's actually a 20 or 15-year-old book, but we did a revised edition. And
I thought it sounded familiar, but then I saw that it was on Amazon.
It's the same title, just a second edition. And stuff goes out of date. The principles are the same in marketing and writing, but there's new things that you have to know. For example, when I wrote the first book, How to Make Money Writing Information, there was no blogs, so that that we had to cover that.
Yeah. That'd be a good update. I have to check that one out too. So
how to write and sell simple information for fun and profit.
Yeah, I like it.
Yep.
All right. Well, Jonathan, I'll let you wrap us up.
Bob, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for joining us on this short notice, and especially Christmas week. Appreciate your time today, and hope you and your family have a wonderful Christmas and a blessed New Year.
Well, I hope you and everyone listening have the same. Happy holidays, a great New Year, and a great 2022.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Take care.
Bye-bye.
God bless. Yeah. Good stuff.
Yep.
Always enjoy having him on. So definitely check that out over at Bly.com. Again, I want to mention the book over at Amazon. You can find it, and the title is The Axioms of Copywriting, the 5 universal elements that form the foundation of advertising copy that works. Grab the Kindle edition or the paperback, which, I bought the Kindle, but I'm ordering the paperback because I love to have, Sean, we love to have those books where we can just tear it up, right?
Yeah, highlighter,
mark it up, highlight, you name it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to all of our listeners, hope you have a great, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. We got a follow-up episode that we're going to be doing. We've got a second episode, so stay tuned. We'll be doing some a random flight of persuasion, all sorts of things we've got coming at you, and I'm excited about it. So stay tuned. Sean, it's been fun. You can find us over at persuasionbythepint.com. You can find us on all of your podcast platforms, Stitcher Radio, iHeart, Spotify, you name it. And we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks.
See ya.
All right.
I think Bob didn't know if he was supposed to stick around, so he's still there.
No, we'll bring him back up.
I'll take bye, but
Thanks, Bob. We enjoyed it.
I always enjoy it. And it's true. Have a great holiday, and thank you again.
Yeah, okay. No problem.
Bye-bye.
Take care, Bob. We'll see you. All right. So I'll send you the link for the next one. And I've got
I can just jump into the broadcast, so I don't need the link.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So I'll just meet you back here in about 10 minutes.
Sounds good. Thanks.
All right.
All right. See you. Bye.